Good evening. Looks like by most clocks it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the November 20th, 2013 City of Santa Barbara Airport Commission. A roll call, please.
Bruce Miller.
Here.
Kirk Martin. Craig Arcuri.
Here.
Chris Colbert. William Gilbert.
Here.
Patricia Griffin.
Here.
Karen Kahn.
Here.
All right, thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And this brings us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission. We have 15 minutes. Any speaker slips?
No speakers.
All right. With that, notices on Friday, November 15th, 2013 at 3:30 p.m. The Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. And minutes, we have a recommendation to waive the reading and approve the minutes.
We do. I so move.
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented for the Wednesday, September 18th, 2013 meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the meetings are approved, or the minutes are approved. Liaison reports, we have our liaison from the City of Santa Barbara, Randy Rouse. Anything to share with us? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I feel under the gun to play it straight tonight since I have these esteemed witnesses this time around. We just had an election, as you well know, and Frank Hotchkiss was reelected, as was Bendy White, and we're adding Greg Hart to the dais for next year. And Greg was a former commissioner, or council member some time ago. So anyway, we'll be long on experience. Your council has been up to a few things other than that, mostly about implementations from Plan Santa Barbara. Something we discussed last night at length were traffic improvement, traffic impacts intersections from commercial development. And even though the airport commercial properties will be part of our Measure E thresholds, we don't plan to reach out into Goleta and play with your intersection, so don't worry about that. We've done that before. And other than that, we are getting ready to appoint our commissioners and committee members that volunteered. So we'll be doing that, I believe, at the December 17th meeting, if I'm not mistaken. And other than that, this is pretty much my report. If I have any questions from the commission, I'd be glad to entertain them. Okay, very good.
All right,
Thank
you
you.
very much. All right, item 4, we have a recommendation to receive a briefing from the City Administrator Jim Armstrong regarding the airport director recruitment.
Yes, Chair Miller and members of the commission, just think back 27 years ago, is that how long it's been?
Just a blink of an eye.
And I think, we all recognize, I think, really what a fantastic job Karen's done over the last 27 years and the institutional memory that she has. And I just think back in the 12 years I've been here and the phenomenal changes that have occurred at this airport, and some that had been on the drawing boards for decades finally came to fruition. The runway safety project, the terminal, 2 of the big ones, and now the new master plan that we're doing. I was thinking about it today. I still remember when we had all that effort on the runway safety project and how difficult it was, and there was lawsuits and everything else. And probably 6 months after it was finished, my phone started ringing. I was down in a theater in Los Angeles, and I'm getting these text messages or calls from Karen, and that's when that select staffing jet went off off the runway. They had to abort a takeoff, and 6 months earlier, probably everybody would have been killed in that incident. And in fact, it was just turned out to be a relatively minor incident. Although I happened to fly back in that evening and talk to the co-pilot. Or I talked to the pilot. The co-pilot had left and told the pilot he would never fly again. He was that frightened. But and that was it kind of shows you the determination we had on a project that we could have just not done it, and instead we pursued it with determinedness, and that's, to me, exhibits what Karen's done for the airport the last 27 years. And in that case, of course, lives were saved, but in terms of the flying experience with the terminal, we've got that terminal will be here 40, 50 years from now, long after we're all gone, and people will be benefiting from it. So we're going to miss you, Karen.
Thank you.
So now we go to, what do we do now? And I'm one of those people, you may have read in the newspaper, we actually have 4 senior executives in the city leaving right now. And it's not that I'm running them all off, but, you know, actually several years ago, all of the department heads and myself, we talked about just the age of all of us. And there's a big band of folks that we all knew were going to be leaving, and we talked about succession planning. And I didn't know it was all going to happen in the space of about 4 months, but we also right now have the city attorney, Steve Wiley, leaving, and Steve's got 30 years of institutional memory with the city. Our public works director, Chris Anderson, just left about 2 weeks ago. And Marcelo Lopez, my assistant, who's been here for 18 years, is going to be leaving at the end of the year. So we have a lot of change going on in the city. And you know, of course, that also creates a lot of opportunities. But my purpose tonight is basically to talk a little about the process we're going to be following in this, you know, in selecting a replacement for Karen. And we're going about it, you know, fairly methodically and slowly. And part of the reason we're going slowly is there's a good bench team here that I expect will appoint an interim director in the next month. And so then we'll take our time on then making a final decision. Because we do have a strong management team, you know, with Hazel and Tracy here. So we're in kind of what I call the listening tour part right now. This morning I was in this room with about 40 of the airport employees, and we did about an hour. Just I asked them, you know, real basic questions like, what's going well at the airport? Where do you think we could improve? And what kind of attributes would you like to see in the next director? And we had a very frank exchange. I told them I would give them all amnesty. They could say whatever they wanted. And then I also offered them the opportunity to send me emails, and I've actually received 3 emails from employees since the meeting this morning. We're also meeting with the key managers. We met with Tracy today. We'll be meeting with Hazel next week. And then we have another meeting with the key supervisors, and basically talking with them about their, you know, perception of where the airport is, what they would like to see in the next director, and we're getting some interesting information. One, I can tell you, people are very proud of where the airport is. They're proud of the sense of family among the employees, but they've also identified areas where we can do better. And many of these are internal areas of, you know, just how to communicate better and the things that employees always talk about. But they've identified some stuff that you know, clearly are areas we can work on. So part of my goal tonight from you is to ask you the same question: what would you like to see in a new director? And I can get that from you tonight if you want to talk, and I'll take notes. The other thing I'd like to ask you to do is ask your chair, Chair Miller, to participate with me and appoint 2 other members that can meet with me quietly and give me your input as to what you'd like to see in the next director. And then next year, when we get into the interview process or whatever process we do, to participate in that process. So those are the 2 kind of objectives I have tonight. And again, I'll be happy to come back if you want to give me more input. Or once you have 3 members selected, then you can give them input, and then they can sit down with me confidentially and privately, and we can have a candid discussion. Sometimes it's tough, not that you're all going to say great things about Karen, but I want people to feel free to be honest and candid about what they'd like to see in the next director. In terms of timing, as I said, we're not in a hurry. Right now, my goal is to appoint an interim director in the next, by December 15th. And then after the first of the year, kind of start looking, okay, what are we going to do on a permanent appointment? And whether we're going to go in-house or whether we're going to do a full-scale recruitment. Those are some of the key decisions we have to make. So that's kind of where we are. I can answer questions, or also I'm ready to take any input you have in terms of what you'd like to see. And then I would ask, you know, if the chair could select a couple people as well as himself to participate in the process as we go forward.
All right, thank you. Well, we'll absolutely select 3 members. We can do that at the end, or we can get that right out of the way up front. I will go ahead and ask for 2
I would
volunteers.
love to volunteer.
I will volunteer. I also have a comment.
Okay. We have 2 other absent directors, but having 2 volunteers, I will go forward with that. And then I'll open to comments.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the things that most impresses me about Karen's term is her interest in and desire to promulgate the development and continuing livelihood of general aviation. So I think, particularly as pilots, which both Jim and I are, we're very aware of this, but I think it's really crucial because given the cost of flying light airplanes and given the amount of impact they have on the community if they don't exist, I think it's really important that we get somebody who understands and has dealt with the fact that Karen came to this, I suspect, 27 years ago without a lot of education in the general aviation area. It only shows what a good job she did on getting on board. But of course, in those days, general aviation was a whole lot more alive and well than it is today. So I think we've got an endangered species, and we need to make sure whoever we bring in has got some good understanding and certainly sympathy toward the effect it has on the community and the importance of it.
All right. Thank you. Other comments? Mr.
Okay,
Gilbert?
what do I do? Karen has taken us from extending runways, safety, all kinds of things, new airport, terminal. We won't discuss the artwork so much, but I can't imagine anybody to take her place. I know we all got to do. Can you do cloning these days? But like I say, I can't think at the moment because now we've got a whole new circumstance. We've got a new terminal. We've got a bigger. We've extended our runways for safety. We have impressive artwork coming. We have a lot of things. What is left to do? Cross the street, cross Hollister, some of these other things. Of course, the biggest thing is getting the community and everybody involved in the outreach of flying and doing, and it's getting harder and harder, I recognize that. But even so, try to find other uses. And like I say, you've about accomplished anything that needs to be done. And I don't know where we can go from here except the day-to-day, make it better, make it more pleasant, make it, I don't know, I hate to use the term profitable because profit has many ways besides dollars. But thank you, Karen.
I would just like to say Karen's been truly inspirational and a really fine leader that's taken in the years that I've been here, which has been a lot of years, all the years that you have been.
She almost succeeded. Oh, she does
Oh my
succeed.
gosh. From something that was really pretty small to something that was really big, and it feels the same. I mean, it feels like a family, just as many of the employees have said. And I think we have felt the same way. You've always made sure that we had all the information that we needed, and you were always available when there were side questions on things, and making sure that we felt that we were provided with the best information so we can make good decisions. And so I appreciate that, and I have a lot of respect for you, and you'll be missed.
Well, I probably wouldn't be able to add a whole lot to all of that. So, our sincere congratulations on retiring, and we wish you the best, of course. And we will definitely miss you. In terms of a new director, I think three things I would ask that we include in the criteria, or at least in the thinking process. And one is that the airport is used kind of from two perspectives. There's the people inside the airport, that's pilots and the businesses here at the airport that are involved in aviation, and the airport looking out, if you will, and then the public who travels through the airport or comes to the airport. And that's really a kind of a public relations effort in both directions. And I think making sure that all those constituencies, and somebody who is comfortable dealing with a variety of constituencies that have absolutely sometimes competing interests, and are able to arbitrate those things and consider them. And one person or one group's interests might not be large relative to the scale of the airport or the economy or the population of Santa Barbara County, but certainly will be very important to that constituency. So, somebody who's got a kind of a fair, and obviously Karen exemplifies that, but a fair hand looking all the way around. And second, something that I've personally experienced is I'd like to see us do a better job of outreach with the patrol here at the airport to both the airport users and the travelers that come through the airport. And then lastly, the terminal project, which was just an amazing project, and we have something that's just absolutely beautiful to be proud of here in our town. I think we have a few more details to tie up with in terms of parking and signage, because I still see a lot of people wandering looking for the rent-a-cars, and I think in that office over there in the old hangar, 5 or 10 people a day come in with their rent-a-car keys and sometimes just leave them there on the desk. And we were thinking of the people that were thinking of getting into the rent-a-car business. And then lastly, the master plan, of course, that's a big event. It'll be the first time in decades, really, that all of the property that's proper to the airport is going to be kind of reconsidered. And so someone who has planning ability and experience at a fairly large scale, because that's a very big event and a big project and lots of ramifications that we'll be living with in this community for 50, 60 years. So I think it's important that they have that scope and scale as well.
Could you elaborate a little more on the airport patrol comment?
Well, this is, I used to maintain an office in the old hangar by Atlantic. I'm a pilot as well, so I'm in and out of there fairly often. And so people often return rent-a-cars or kind of drive into that area looking to pick somebody up or drop somebody off. And I've watched 2 or 3 times kind of the proverbial little old lady get chased off or ticketed there. And I think we could do a kind of a better job with maybe a softer hand, and no disrespect to the airport patrol whatsoever. They probably get sick of all the various excuses, but I think that's part of a signage issue, which is a fairly minor point for this conversation. But part of it is the signage issue, so people kind of wind up parking there, and sometimes they get chased off and sometimes they don't. And so that perspective, and then just as part of the airport community, our interface, I think I met last year for the first time in 12 years here at the airport. I met one of the airport patrol folks and talked to them for 10 minutes. And I certainly could be reaching out to them, but I think the airport businesses are really part of the patrol, because we know who's supposed to be here at the airport and who doesn't belong at the airport on the airport side. And so we're somewhat of an extension to that crew. And we have to know who to talk to and have a conversational relationship with them. Thank you.
And I'll add to that I've heard comments from the traveling public about the, what should we say, I don't want to be cruel, but kind of the stormtrooper mentality of scaring people off at the curb when the curb's empty. And I understand they don't want them to loiter, but I mean, to the extent that it goes overboard and they kind of felt a little, milk of human kindness might be in order, because we'd like to say we are a friendly community, not a, this is the way it is, get out, because I guess the question is it 2 to 3 minutes standing that bad when there isn't another car on the curb? So I think that type of attitude. Plus, I must say, I don't think I've ever seen the patrol over on the GA side of the field, and maybe they don't show up here or they're short-staffed, but that is another concern. And I would say, you with your experience, Jim, of you as somebody who actually parks there and probably has a greater concern about who or what's walking around. I don't know what your experience are, but I think it's a viable concern for all of us.
Well, I just have to say, I know we'll have a chance to say lots of other good things about you later at another occasion too, I hope. But I think some of the attributes I think that are so stellar about Director Ramsdell is really kind of her passion, her commitment, and her approachability. And you know, I think there's always a perception that you have city administrators who are just kind of, you know, the faceless city administrators who, you know, we don't have to care, we work for the city. But I have, to a person, I have never run into anybody who had anything negative to say about Karen. And, you know, she's very approachable, and I think people feel very comfortable talking with her. They feel like she really listens to what they have to say. They may not always agree with whatever comes out of it, but I think everybody feels that they've been listened to. Her passion about the airport and its purpose are just really awesome. I think I'm sure there are city administrators out there that it wouldn't matter to them much if they were, you know, managing a treatment plant or an airport or, you know, a parking facility. It's all just, you know, it's just numbers and people. So what does the mission matter? But that's absolutely never been anything that I think anybody would experience with Karen. I mean, it's all about aviation, the airport, and its mission, as opposed to just being about another city function. And I think another really huge piece of her success here is that it isn't just about the airport in itself, but I think she's been very committed to the community as a whole. I know that she's very active. She's well known and well regarded in the community. She certainly has a sense of history here, but
Saying I'm old.
but it isn't just that. It's your engagement with the community and the city and the process, and certainly the constituencies that I think are very impressive. And I think those are qualities that I think are very important in whoever attempts to fill that role, is that real sense of the airport is a part of the community, and you're very engaged in it. So I think that's some of the things I would certainly hope to see. And as I said, I hope we'll have an opportunity to say lots more good things about you later. And you know, I can't think of a negative thing to say. So, all right. Anything else?
What was the criteria you used to pick Karen?
He didn't.
I will say, you know, one of the things we tell our new employees is that we use Karen as an example of somebody who worked her way up from, I think you started in risk management or
City
the clerk's
clerk's
office, the
office.
city clerk's office in a clerical role, and then risk management, then the harbor, and then over to the
I
airport.
recognize working the way up, but when it came to become the director, there was a criteria.
You know,
It'd be interesting to know when you have your little sessions.
Karen,
Well, one
you-
of the things I found in looking back at what Dick Thomas did when he was a city administrator is he made a lot of good choices and good decisions, and Karen was one of them.
but Karen, you came to the airport from the harbor. You weren't here first as an employee and then moved into the directors.
No, I came to the harbor, from the harbor as I was appointed assistant director here. And then the director, after I was here for a couple of years, had a brain hemorrhage overnight and didn't come. I was interim or acting for a year till they decided whether he could come back medically or not, and he couldn't. And then Dick Thomas, the administrator then, did kind of what Jim is doing, and he talked to, you know, various people on the field, the FBOs, tenants, people in the community, see what condition the airport was in, but you know, I would encourage you. I know it's hard when you're sitting here face to face. It's kind of awkward, and you know, being on camera. But I would encourage you, if you think that there are things that could be improved, or we could do things differently, or at least look at it, is to get in touch with Jim or through Bruce and get your comments through. So
If you were looking for your successor, what would you be looking for, or things that you have found are really important that you think maybe you brought to the airport that are unique?
I think the willingness to collaborate. One of the reasons that the runway project didn't go anywhere for years and years was the clash between the environmental community and the airport. And I think just, my view is, not like loving conflict, is that first try and get along and work it out together. You can always disagree and fight and sue each other or whatever. But first of all, try and get, things that all of you need. And that approach worked. So I think it's important, especially where the airport's located. We have different jurisdictions around. Reaching out to the city of Goleta, I think, was important. I think we've really forged a pretty good relationship with them. And I really consider this everybody's airport, not, the city is the steward of it, but it belongs to everybody in our county. So I think it's worked for me to say that's a good approach.
Thank you.
One other thing, Jim, I hope you got on your list to talk to the docents.
Oh, the
Ambassadors?
the ambassadors.
Because they get it before we do.
Well, I know we all tremendously appreciate everything you've done for the airport, and it's just been really a wonderful thing to be able to work with you, in some cases for many years. Yes. Okay. Any other items? So I have Commissioner Khan and Griffin, and we will set up.
What we'll do is we'll get your email addresses, and then we'll contact you and set up a meeting.
Okay. And then I guess the protocol for anybody else who would like to give us feedback, what would be the appropriate way to
They can
channel
either
that?
give it to you, and then you can present it, or you're welcome to send me an email direct. And you
Okay.
can get the email address from Karen.
Okay, so I guess any one of you can contact me or email me directly and forward that, or to Jim. All right. Okay. Very good. And I think that takes us to the the director's report.
Oh, so I was telling Jim, this is your favorite part of the agenda every month.
After the integrated pest management.
Where's Jeff?
Yeah, right. I am.
He's getting better.
We look forward to it even more. Well, again, as I do every month, I'll just point out a few of the items, and then if you have any questions about the others, you may, I'd be happy to answer them, your questions. On passenger count, we're down 2.1% October over the previous October, and down 3.4% year-to-date. And we have our air service consultant and our staff kind of trying to figure out what's going on, whether, our load factors are really high, which means we don't have any seats, so we need more seats, or if we have capacity, what's happening. I know the San Francisco flights, there have been lots of cancellations. And then I might mention this coming spring, the San Francisco, one of their runways is going to be shut down for how long?
May to September.
May till September. And they're doing a lot of planning and trying to mitigate the chaos that that's going to cause. The FAA is working with the airport and as well as the airlines, but that's to come. But in the meantime, we've had a lot of flight cancellations with United San Francisco. So we're trying to get a handle on really why our passenger count, continues to go down a little bit each month. In communications, we were approached by Google to have them map our the terminal and then put it on their, the website or the web, so that people have the floor plan and can figure out where things are in the terminal before they even arrive. So I think that'll be a good addition. And December 16th, we're hosting is this our third or fourth annual Songs of the Seasons, where we have the high schools bring their, like the madrigals out to sing. We have, I don't know if we have any elementary schools this year, but we have through the week different performances at different times of the day, which is kind of fun. Let's see, master plan, we're just beginning the environmental work, so it'll probably be quiet for a while we start that process. And annual recruitment for advisory boards. Council, they're interviewing candidates as now, and we'll be making appointments on December 10th, so.
17th.
Oh, the 17th?
It's changed to 17th.
Oh. 17th. That's why you were here tonight, to correct me. And so you'll have hopefully 2 new commissioners come January. Property management, we, as you know, are trying to engage the services of a real estate broker to help us find a tenant for the Elephant Bar and the Willover building. And that's proving to be a challenge just because the normal real estate broker agreement is very different than the way the city kind of operates. So we're trying to work those challenges out, you know, based on, for instance, they get a commission on the signing of the lease, and then if there's an option, normally they would get another, you know, bit of a commission for each option period. Well, the city, that's difficult for the way that the city budgets and does their financial, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but anyway, we're trying to overcome that challenge between kind of how the private sector does it and the city has to do it. So,
Karen, do we have any candidates or interested parties?
we do have, in fact, the Radius Group is the broker that we've selected and are trying to get the agreement with. They've been contacted by some folks. They will be marketing the properties as well, and we have received inquiries, so which we have noted, and then we'll pass those on to the broker.
Is the normal process that you would go through if you hired a consultant, which I'm assuming is a straight fee for doing the job, be it leasing the property or providing a report, is that just not acceptable to them, or that's?
They're not, that's not the way that they tend to do business, so we'll get through it. It's just a challenge to figure out the right.
And if a
thing
tenant
that's gonna
comes
work.
along in the meanwhile, or do they have some exclusive?
Well, pretty soon we'll decide whether it's going to work or not, and I have faith that it will. And so, but if it doesn't, then we can take it on ourselves. As you know, we are starting the runway 15 right, 33 left rehabilitation, and that runway will be closed for a period, right? From, what's the date?
I believe it opens back up in January.
Okay, so I haven't heard any hue and cries yet, so.
It's going well.
Is it? Good. Okay. And that's all I was going to point out, and if you have any other questions from items on the report, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions? I had a city item, it's not on the report, but it's relevant. I'm just wondering if we can get a status on your financial system replacement, which I understand is nearing into production, is that right? And how that might be impacting you all?
The city's implementing a new financial management system, and it goes online January the 6th. And at least right now, it's on time, on budget. There's a lot of training going on in the city, as you can imagine. When this is the first modules that go into a place are accounts receivable, accounts payable, the budget module, the general ledger, kind of the basic backbone. And it's a huge effort for a lot of employees. So you may find some admin folks are not as available as they typically are in the next 2-3 weeks. But I think so far everybody's feeling really good.
Great. That's a good report. Certainly looking forward to moving into paperless billing, maybe even.
Ooh.
All right. Any other questions? Nope. Well-
We adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
I don't think it needs it.
We're adjourned.